Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. I just wanted to briefly explain the video that I shot early morning, this morning at about 4 a.m. or between 4 and 5 a.m. So what happened last night is, this is essentially every single night now. I have been physically assaulted with these microwave beams since January. So they punch beams into my body anyhow. But it was very, very difficult to actually detect them because they're pulsed beams. And I know from experience, from what I feel, that throughout the night I'm being assaulted even harder. And if you look at the NSA whistleblower, Catherine Stewart, she's also experiencing exactly the same thing as I. So at night, I mean, with women, they turn sadistic. Essentially, you've got all these intelligence agents who, it seems to be, from what we know from the papers, first of all, the intelligence agencies have been running the child prostitution rings. That's pretty clear to absolutely everybody with half a brain. But I pointed out these websites, the MI5 and MI6 Exposed, which are blogs written by their desperate agents who say we've all been sex abused. And the question is, why would a system, operate like that? And it's pretty clear that these systems have become psychopathic a long time ago. So psychopaths, are populating the higher echelons, and they know that they can work with other psychopaths better. So they are grooming psychopaths, they are fostering psychopaths. And that's why the selection procedure is just so freaking psychopathic. They essentially just kill off all normal people. And what's the child sex about, this child sex abuse and also the abuse of the agents? Well, the trauma that you experience during this abuse yourself is essentially breaking, fragmenting your personality. And there's different, so essentially it is like a neurological process. So your brain, will react to negative impulses a lot stronger than positive ones. I mean, we all know that if you get good news, you're happy for a bit, and then you're back to normal. But if you get bad news, you're depressed for a week. And that's an internal brain mechanism. So, the brain has to have evolved so that we remember and react to negative impulses a lot more strongly, because that's what keeps us alive. But psychopaths figured this out, and they are essentially using it to, cause trauma, and whatever they inscribe in you during trauma would be essentially hardwired into your brain. So this is why pain and assault and horrific stuff is being used, but what's essentially happening is that you're being programmed by psychopaths. Okay, so if you're with good people, like, I don't teach students, I never taught students by just shocking them and, torturing them. Maybe they would have remembered quantum mechanics better that way. But this is a very bad way to actually write stuff into your brain, because there are a lot of downsides. It's a very, it's hardwiring. Okay, so whatever you will remember it, but other things will happen to your brain as well, which is why, typically at Oxford, we don't torture people to near death and then teach them quantum mechanics at the same time. We go with the slow process that's a bit better for you, by actual learning. But what the intelligence agencies seem to have done is that they have groomed psychopaths. Essentially 1% of the population is clinical psychopaths, and they want to find them and they want to recruit them, because what they're doing is disgusting, horrific stuff, and you don't want your enablers and your minions to ever ask questions. You just want them to be fine with murdering people. But you have to have a selection system, apparently, that, first of all, picks them out, and second of all, once you have a group of psychopaths, they're fucking psychopaths. They're not going to care about rules, okay? So what this system seems to be that we've uncovered, and it seemed to have probably just developed intuitively, like senior psychopaths figured stuff out and they did it. And, people can sometimes do a lot of stuff without knowing the science behind it, but now let's break it down. And if you're a victim of this, like a civilian victim, you should be interested, because they will probably do the same thing with you, because that's the only thing they know how to do, because they're fucking psychopaths. But if you're also an MI5 and MI6 agent who has gone through this bullshit, you have to repair yourself. And the only way you can repair yourself so that you don't become like them is if you figure out what has been done to you and you repair yourself. And you can repair your brain. It can happen. But for that you have to go back to where it hurts, okay? And that's a long, difficult journey. But maybe if you understand what has been done, you stop being scared to go there, okay? So from everything I've found online and what people are saying, I'm now trying to, as a systems analyst, I'll try to map it out for you, because you need to repair yourself and then you need to help me and you have to help all the other victims. Okay, so here we go. As I understand it, this whole child sex abuse bullshit, think about it. You've got the intelligence agencies and traditionally having to do criminal, horrific stuff, murdering people, assassinations. So you want all the psychopaths. The problem is once you have all psychopaths, they don't stick to rules. And if they can put a knife into your back, then they will. So you have to find a way of controlling your psychopaths. And one of them is primordial fear. So you have to get them young. That's why I guess they're picking on children and they're grooming already children. You can turn people psychopathic as well, because a psychopath is essentially somebody without empathy. So that's, feature number one. And you can switch off emotion and you can turn people into machines if you expose them to trauma, because what their brain will then do, so emotion slows you down, it's chemistry, hormones and stuff like that. But just pure logical thought is just, electricity basically in your brain. It's a bit faster, and in an emergency situation, as far as I can tell, what the brain does is switch off emotion, So if you have been in a lot of trauma situations, for example, a doctor who is, say at working for the ambulance service and has to go to horrific accident scenes, even if he's not a psychopath, after a lot of training, he can switch off emotion and just work like a machine to save people's lives. Okay, so essentially he will have become a trained psychopath, but kind of like a good psychopath, and the fact that he doesn't feel emotion is what keeps the victims of car crashes alive, the fact that he doesn't flip out when he sees horrific injuries, okay? But a psychopath, a natural born psychopath, will have just no emotion. He will just not give a shit. He's like, okay, that guy's bleeding and, half his leg is missing, but hey, I'm fine. Here I'm eating, an ice cream. And that's the sad truth. So if you have become an agent for these organizations, they would want you to turn into a psychopath, but a controllable psychopath. So they will want to, the only way you can control a psychopath is by actually getting them young or exposing them to horrific trauma, and then try to put in control mechanisms during that trauma that will be hardwired into your brain. So, making them obey you, and having these kind of obedience games whilst you see your peers being murdered and shit like that. So this is how to explain all the psychopathic end state bullshit that you find if you type into Google MI5, MI6 exposed. It fucking blew my mind the first time I read it, but bit by bit you can figure out the system. Now, this is where all this bullshit comes from, and that's why they always try to keep you scared, high cortisol levels, that's essentially how the brain then does the hardwiring, But if you have been hardwired that like that, what you essentially have is ginormous scarring in your brain. And as you know, if you've got a real scar, the skin there is thicker. So it's because it's reinforced. So your problem is that stuff has been hardwired into your brain and reinforced much harder than the stuff that you really should be doing, which is to be an empathic, altruistic human being. And why is it better to have systems with altruistic people and not psychopaths? I mean, psychopaths do work, they are very efficient, but just like the military, they're very efficient in fucking things up. If you want to turn something into utter rubble, you use the command structure of the military. Freaking perfect. They will be quick and everything will be just, rubble. Great. But if you want to do anything else in life, that stuff is bullshit. So this is why military command structures in everyday life, like we have them in most companies, are essentially bullshit. And what they do is turn people's lives into rubble, not surprisingly. And similarly, if you've got a system with just psychopaths, it's great if you want to run around, conquer other countries and turn them into fucking rubble. Super. But if you actually want to have, an organization and actually in charge of national security, the last thing you want to have is fucking psychopaths, because they don't give a shit about the country. You know, so you should have over empathetic people in the intelligence agencies, not psychopaths. But unfortunately, the system ended up upside down. So if you want to flip this back up into a, you know, more sane world, you have to repair the agents. You have to repair all MI5 and MI6 agents, and you have to do that quickly. Now, they are psychopaths, so it's pretty hard. But also what's really good is that because they're psychopaths, typically they also don't really feel that much fear tackling, you know, scary stuff. And if you want to repair yourself, you have to go to a place that's really, really scary, which is essentially where the original trauma was inscribed into your brain. And that's because the only way you can get rid of it is if you overwrite it, right? Like a hard drive, okay? If you want to erase data, you have to overwrite it. So what you essentially have to do is go back in your mind. You know, that's already hard enough because your brain will put like protection barriers, you know, around the scar area. So only in an emergency can you go there. You know, this is why, for example, you have these soldiers coming back from Iraq and they operate normally, you know, most of the time, because the brain has put essentially a protective barrier. The synapses don't connect up the same way. So you don't end up triggering this area that you developed being in Iraq or in a war zone. But if you're in a bar and someone becomes aggressive and you flip back into soldier mode, into defending yourself, you will suddenly access that area. And people who have, you know, what they call PTSD will flip. Well, PTSD is a complex name just for the fact that you have accessed a part of your brain that still has the old, you know, software hardwired, if you like, and it was never overwritten. So what you have to do is, if you come back from a war zone, you have to go back to your original programming, which would be, if you're in danger, you take a fucking gun and shoot someone in the head. And that's what people with PTSD will end up doing in a lot of cases, because that's the hardwired program. But what you have to do is, when you come back from a war zone, you have to go back under controlled circumstances, without a gun on yourself, go back into stressful situations and overwrite your programming. Okay? So, and if you don't do that, that stuff is hardwired into your head and will stay there for decades. Do you understand? So if you're an MI5 and MI6 agent, you have to overwrite this. If you're a soldier, also listen, because you also have to overwrite this. Anything inscribed into your brain with trauma has to be overwritten, and you have to change the program. So you have to experience similar trauma, which is hard enough. It will make you feel horrible, and you have to have enough consciousness during it that you don't execute the old program, you pick a new one. And you have to train that, literally like you got trained over and over and over. If you're a soldier, for example, you will have muscle memory from what you have to do if you're being attacked. You will just pull out a gun and not think about it. You will do certain things. Well, you have to overwrite that if you're entering civilian life. But no one actually does that. You know, the army trains you up and then just drops you. What they have to do is train you up and train you back down again. Okay, and then you can enter civilian life. Otherwise, you'll be, you know, a killing machine in the middle of a city, you know. But if you're now one of these traumatized people, you have to go back and you have to, first of all, consciously think, okay, you know, if you can remember what your programming is. Most people don't even know that because they use all sorts of fucked up stuff. But you have to slowly, bit by bit, build up something that you act completely differently under stress. And if you can pick something uber altruistic, then that will make sure you never attack somebody, you know? And you have to do that because you guys have been programmed to be killing machines. Okay, so this is the rough idea. Now, where does all this child sex abuse come in? Well, first of all, if you have been sex abused as a child and then recruited to the intelligence agencies, they did that because they wanted to hardwire control mechanisms into your head whilst you were really, really young. Okay? If you're now a victim and these people fire at you, what they want to do is the same stuff as they did with their agents, you know. They want, and you probably notice this, if you're hurt, you get angry, and they want to condition you to be angry and attack other people so that if they make you flip, you embarrass yourself in public and attack somebody. Well, don't do that. Overwrite it. Every single time they attack you, you send a letter to somebody, to an MP. And that's how you can flip the system. So the more they attack you, the more you're spreading information about this. Okay? Do you understand what I mean? So the same thing if you're an agent. If you've been conditioned, so you understand hopefully the child sex abuse if it has been done to you as a child. Now, what is this child sex abuse about when it's done by adults? Well, what this is conditioning your brain to turn on the weak. Do you understand? So above you, there's an entire tower of fucking psychopaths, okay, who just take you to be just an object. Now, I'm the complete opposite. I'm on the other side of the spectrum. For me, every single one of you is an individual worth protecting. All of you are precious. All of you are worth saving, okay? So I'm now saying the complete opposite. But what I'm saying is you have to protect the weak. If you're slightly stronger than somebody else, you have to protect them. You have to slide above them and be with that much more strength, you know, protecting. Even if you're not much stronger. Because then if someone else comes in and slides in above you and protects you with just slightly more strength than you, bit by bit you build up essentially a layer of protection. And you've got the weakest in the middle, like a herd. You lock around the weakest and, you know, and this is how you have to be. Now, what the intelligence agencies seem to have done is invert this. But they've done this centuries ago. So all the heads of the intelligence agencies these days got fucked up by the previous generation of psychopaths, who got fucked up by the previous generation of psychopaths, and so on. So if you want to break this fucking roving, cartwheeling bullshit that's currently happening, we have to start at the base and we have to go up. And if anybody can get through to the heads of these intelligence agencies, super, because they might be the most fucked up of the lot. But you basically have to go back and you have to understand all this child sex abuse that you're forced to commit, it is to condition you to turn on the weak, okay? Because the intelligence agencies have been built up as an assault system. And if you assault somebody, if you assault the weak first, you know, you create horror and terror, and then, you know, you assault eventually at the very last step the strong ones. You know, so this is how you kind of like conquer country. You know, these are conquering systems, these are military systems. But unfortunately, we live in a world now where we are all interconnected and we all need each other. So even supply chains are interconnected. And the recent years, they've attacked now Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, and so on. But the more countries they attack, the more they will attack their own supply system. And we're now dealing with complex systems, and no one actually keeps track of the full supply chain. They think they do, but really they don't. They've got lots of little supply chains. So they will be killing off key components of their own architecture. They are that big now, you know. And the more people they start killing, the more they'll screw themselves. So what we're doing now is we're turning the system back. We're now a global society. We need everybody. But for that, we have to stop fucking killing each other, okay? And to stop fucking killing each other, we have to repair the psychopaths. And some psychopaths are beyond repair, and those we have to lock up and keep safe in, you know, in the UK, in Belmarsh prison, you know. But there are some psychopaths who are not natural-born psychopaths, but trained psychopaths. They have been, and those you can repair. It takes some time, but you have to repair. So you know what you're doing, and only you can repair yourself, okay? And if you are a victim of the intelligence agencies, only you can repair yourself. And what they want you to do, if you're a victim, is to assault you from the outside, to make you, you know, crack inside, to be isolated, to attack yourself, to attack your loved ones. You know, it's kind of like you're being, it's like a boiler room. It's like, you know, you're being cooked, essentially, pressure cooked from the outside. And what you have to do to break out of this is you have to reach through the gaps, reach out to others so that others who are on the outside can essentially turn on these fuckers around you. Do you see? You're essentially in the middle. These people are around you like a jaw. So you have to reach out to others who will then come in and, you know, destroy the fuckers, you know, or take them off your case. So this is what you have to do, I think. this is what I would say as a systems analyst. So every time they attack you, reach out to even more people you haven't reached out to. You know, if there's anybody you haven't told about this, what's being done to you yet, tell them then, you know, and tell them even more, because then the more they, you know, they press in on you, the more you're reaching out, and the more people, you know, out on the outside perk up and suddenly start moving in. Do you see? So this is the battle plan. So every time they assault you, you start writing letters, you're tweeting, you're talking to friends, you're, go, and I'm not sure if there's point in talking to the police. If they try to section you, don't talk to them, talk to other people. But if there's one police officer who you think has got his head screwed on, talk to him, because they also don't know what these microwave weapons are and all this fancy stuff. And frankly, they have their handful with dealing with just normal crime. They do not have the capacity to be researching this. So you have to educate them. But keep reaching out and, you know, find the people who are good, who have their heads screwed on, and reach out. Okay? So for the victims, this is it. You have to break through the barrier. It's like you're under siege by an army, and you have to break through the ranks, okay, through their ranks, to reach help on the other side of the army. That's it. Now, if you're one of these fucked up agents moving in on somebody, you have to realize that you've been conditioned to turn on the weak. And this system was built up because MI5, MI6, they are military intelligence. These are military installations, typically used to conquer other people. All right, and that's what they did. We now have private eye articles about how, MI6 is in Syria, and, you know, should they be there? Yeah, of course. You know, they're going out conquering other people and turning places into rubble, like a bunch of fucked up psychos. You know, and for that sort of purpose, fucked up psychos are super. But meanwhile, they're also running around like fucked up psychos in their own country, you know? And then you have to think, you know, I mean, at that point, military intelligence lost the intelligence bit, you know? So what it looks like to me is this ginormous system has been built up. The budget of MI5 just doubled. They've recruited even more fucked up gang stalkers, and are now expanded the child abuse and the child abductions to feed this even, you know, twice as big system of you know, psychopath recruitment streams. And for that you need children. I mean, whoa, okay, so that's the shit we're now dismantling. Okay, but for that we need everybody on board. We need the victims, the perpetrators need to have their head out of their ass ASAP, and the heads of the intelligence agencies even faster. Okay, so if anyone can get through to these dudes at the top, please do, because, you know, they have gone cuckoo, you know. But this is basically the plan. If you're a perpetrator, you have to repair yourself. And you have to realize that you have been conditioned to turn on the weak. This is a military strategy. But if you're applying a military strategy in your own country, something's gone wrong. Okay? So stop running around. Like, here I am, right? I'm not like the best scientist and some, you know, girl genius. But I am pretty good. Okay, and meanwhile I'm being just attacked by the countries I work for, you know, by my own country, Germany, but here in Switzerland, where I'm trying to make their own fucking companies better, and by the UK, where I taught their own students with, you know, all the skill and love that I had. How fucked up is that? So something went badly wrong in this system, and this is essentially a system out of control. So everybody needs to understand this. If they're perpetrators, if they're victims, you have been sucked into a system that's now destroying itself. So we have to step out, all of us together, okay? And we have to rotate the system to one that is actually functional and what's it called, like resilient and you know, sustainable. Because this isn't. You're kind of like sawing on the branch that you're sitting on, you know, and there's like a 80-foot drop below you. Not a good idea. So this is it. So perpetrators have to repair, but it's also very, very hard because they've essentially been hardwired. And there's one online statement by Julianne McKinney, the military intelligence officer, and she talks about the gang stalkers, and she says Yes, they are trained to grin at you. They're trained to laugh at you whilst they're assaulting you. Doesn't that sound like a psychopath has trained them to turn on the weak? You know, and this thing of they were trained to grin at the victims whilst they're being assaulted has got two functions. Number one, it hides the real natural-born psychopaths who would do that anyway, you know, in this mass of other people who've just been taught to do that, okay? So they all look like little psychos. So none of them sticks out as a bit odd. You know, in normal life, a psycho would be like freaking obvious. You suddenly have, you know, Hannibal Lecter sitting next to you. That's a bit, you know, disconcerting. But if they're all told to do that, the genuine natural-born psychopaths will not stick out. Okay? They will be in with the homies. Now, the natural-born psychopaths are the ones who these intelligence agencies want to recruit eventually. Okay? But they want to have you all in the training, and the real ones that they're going to pick at the end should not stick out. Okay? So that's function number one of teaching the gang stalkers to grin at you. Okay? Function number two is you all have to be turned into little, you know, if you're not a natural-born psychopath, into a trained psychopath. You're being trained up to be like a psychopath. Okay? That's what this is. That's what this is about. And if you think you're really clever, laughing at the victims, you forget that there's a real-born psychopath above you, laughing his head off because you've just become his enabler. And he doesn't want to do the dirty work because psychopaths are kind of lazy. So you're going to do the dirty work for fucking psychopath. And if anything happens, you're going to go to jail, not him. You know, that's it. You're the one who's screwed. And you're potentially even more screwed than the victim. Okay, because the victim is surrounded by real psychopaths, some of them, and a couple of trained psychopaths who are a bit more benign because they can be turned back very quickly. But you, my dear, if you're perpetrator, the one above you or the one above him is a natural-born psychopath. Right? If you step out of line, you die. Do you see? So, really, it's not a good idea being a perpetrator. Okay? Because you end up surrounded by psychopaths. Okay, so this is the system that we're dealing with. I'm not sure if this made any sense. If you don't know anything about the system, it probably sounded like I'm just out there. But I'm just trying to use systems analysis to tell everybody how, you know, in this utterly end-state fucked up situation, one can take the system and revert it, you know, flick it upside down back into something more normal. You know, because really the psychopath should be at the bottom, and the most empathetic, the most altruistic people should be at the top. And you can use systems analysis to prove that this is the best way to do it, actually. Because the person at the top has to care about everybody below equally. They have to be over-empathizers. Because it's only when they care do they take in the information from everywhere. You know, it's like if your boss doesn't care about you and you tell him stuff that's actually really important for his business, but he doesn't care about you, he's not going to listen. But it's really important for his business, but he's not listening because he thinks, who the hell is that, you know? And then information flow breaks down. So actually the highest performing systems, if you have to use pyramids, which are not great, but if you have to use a pyramid, if you put a psychopath at the top, he's not going to give a shit about anybody. All right? So he's not going to take in the information. He will be out doing drugs and, you know, sleeping around with women or whatever, but he will not be great for the business. And if he cares about people, he wants to imprint his own will on his enablers, but he doesn't have the information, all the information. So eventually what he imprints on his enablers for this ginormous organization will be bullshit. And this system will be essentially a dysfunctional mess. It will be the empire of bullshit, you know. So essentially this is how systems analysis actually works, right? If you have a pyramid organization, the further up you get to the top, the more this person has to digest and, you know, take in the information of other people, and they can only do that if they really care about other people. And you can see that in companies when the company boss cares about everybody, like the secretary, the cleaner, and, you know, anybody, they are always there when even the cleaner says, look, I really need to talk to you. This cleaner might be talking about, hey, I've just discovered that in the factory, cleaning the factory, supplies have been disappearing. Could be important. If the boss doesn't care, he's like, I'm not talking to cleaners. But if the boss is really empathetic, he's like, really, you need to talk to me, come in, what's the problem? You see, so it's about information flow, actually. It's about how people process information, number one. And second of all is also, if a person cares about every single person in the organization, he will take care of them. And it's almost like somebody who has a car and really loves that car and takes great care of the engine. Every little cog is just repaired and polished and kept clean, and the machine is operating beautifully. Someone who just buys a car to pick up women and couldn't give a damn about the engine, well, eventually the engine's going to degrade and he's not going to repair it, and it's going to jam eventually. So this is what we have. This is the task ahead. We have to take the intelligence agencies that have become this psychopathic, cartwheeling insanity and flip them around, I mean, the top has to be changed. The traumatized people below have to be changed. Okay? And actually, funnily enough, the only people who can do that are the victims. Okay? Because you have got a right to shout loud, You have got essentially a right. Anybody will recognize. If you send an email to somebody and say, please help me, I'm dying, no one's going to argue with you why you're the person contacting them, So you have to start shouting that this system needs to be changed, and only the pressure from the victims against the system can make the system turn around, But you have to do it. Okay, this is all I'm going to say in this video. I hope it helps. I'm not sure if everybody agrees with it. If not, let me know or make your own video. And please, everybody who listens to this, help us turn this around one way or another, please.